Hey there, John with Crow's Nest Craft. Today I'm going to be showing you how I made this 4-story wizard tower. I was asked to run Van Richten's tower in a Curse of Strahd campaign I've been playing in, and of course I said yes. I threw this together in a weekend, and I made it rather plain so I could put a different door on it if I wanted to change the vibe in the setting. I did go a rather aged look though, with the tile roofing kind of looking a little janky and the stone siding having some age to it. But other than that, it's rather plain and it can be used for most settings. So let's get started on the build. So I'm going to be using this XPS foam. You can pick this up at any hardware store. I'm sure you've seen other people use it and maybe used it yourself. So right now I'm going to be making the walls. I'm going to be cutting them at this little thickness here. I'm making them about 3 centimeters thick, and I'm using my hot wire cutter to do so. If you don't know what a hot wire cutter is, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's this little tabletop thing that makes a wire super hot so it can cut foam. Now that I have the walls cut, I'm going to be cutting the angle onto the sides, so that way it'll go together in the shape of a pentagon. I chose a pentagon because I'm using this for a Ravenloft setting, and I figured a pentagon's a little bit creepier because, pentagram, and the shape is just a little bit more off-putting. My hot wire cutter is a little bit on the cheaper side, so it doesn't have as many attachments and stuff, so I had to do some rigging to get the right angle. So now that we have all the walls cut, I want to add some texture to make them look more like stone. A really cheap and easy way to do that is aluminum foil. I'm going to make a little roller out of aluminum foil, making it into the shape of a rolling pin, roll it across the foam, and it will leave a stone-like texture. And I'll just do it on each of them. I'll do it on the sides, a little bit on the top, since I want to be able to take each floor off and see each layer. Now I'm just using hot glue to glue all the walls together. I think some of these walls are going to be slightly different lengths, but they should all work out in the end. And I mean, a little bit of error isn't going to be the end of the world. Once I hit it with paint and stuff, it will be pretty forgiving to the lengths not being exact to all the other walls. The angle, however, was spot on. These turned into pentagrams very easily, and I didn't really need to play with the glue that much. Now for the floor, I'm going to be using this dollar store foam board. This is the stuff that usually has the paper on the outside. You can just peel that off super easily. It's almost like a protective coating. And I'm going to use this dollar store razor blade to just make a really rough floor for each of these pentagons. To add a little bit of character and to overshadow some of the mistakes, I am going to leave a little bit of a lip so it looks like an overhang between each level on the outside. Now I want to make this magnetic so it kind of holds itself together really lightly. I'm not using really strong magnets, I'm just using some of those cheap ones you can get in the craft aisle at any department store. I'm making little holes using actually a marker cap in the foam, so I'm just kind of pressing the marker cap in there. It's the same exact size as the magnets, so I'll make these little holes and then I'll be able to glue in these little magnets that I picked up from Walmart. So I'm now just going to be gluing the floor to the walls with this hot glue. I'm also going to use this hot glue very lightly to go over some of the cracks in between the walls and in between the floor and the walls, so that way it looks more like one piece and there's no gaps. I'm also going to very lightly go over the magnets on the bottom, not a whole lot because you still want them to stick, but just enough to keep them in. Now I need something for the magnets to stick to and hold the floors together. I'm going to be using small sections of those staples that you use for staple guns. I've used washers before, but I find that you just need a lot of glue to keep them on, and these staples will kind of just stick right into the foam. You put a little bit of glue and they don't come out. These also lay flush and are a lot easier to hide when I glue them on, so that way when I take the floors apart, you won't see them. So this build was rather last minute, so I'm just using stuff I had around the house, and around the house I had this box board. This is a case of woodchuck hard cider. Shout out, I love this stuff. And I'm cutting some triangles out to make a pentagon roof. And I'm just doing some really basic measurements and hoping when I put them together, they'll have a decent peak. So I really eyeballed this. We're going to use some painter's tape to put these together and see if I did a good enough job just kind of eyeballing the shapes and how tall I think the peak will actually be once I put these all together. So we'll use this blue painter's tape on both sides to get an initial shape down, and then after this we'll glue them together a little bit more and add the shingles, but let's see if this worked. So I really like the shape. I think it looks great and it's not too tall of a peak where it's gonna look like a church. So now I'm gonna be taking the spare bits of this box board and just cutting strips to then chop up into shingles and glue them on the top of this roof. So as for a shape and size, I really don't care. I'm kind of just going for a shambled look, like it's been sitting for a long time. Maybe they're a little askew. So when I'm gluing them on, I'm putting them on slight angles, making them look like there might be some loose ones here and there. And with time restraints, a shambled look is a lot easier to make look good or technically look bad. And it's a lot more forgiving once I get to the paint. Now to add more detail to the walls, I am going to make them look like bricks. For the horizontal lines, I used a really thin saw, and I just did lightly, went over that with that, and I used a little bit of a nail file to clean it up, and now I'm using this scalpel to go through and make the vertical lines and kind of stagger them to look like stacked bricks. So now that I'm done with the building process of this, I'm going to just smother this in black paint and Mod Podge mix. I use about a 1-to-1 ratio, maybe a little bit more Mod Podge, but this will be a nice protective coating for the foam, and it will fill in any of the cracks that I missed. Now for the base coat of paint, I'm going to be using a really dark gray, and I've thinned it a lot with just water. And I'm going to put it on top of the black paint and Mod Podge mix, where the black paint and Mod Podge is going to kind of act as the initial base coat. And since this is thin, it'll still leave a little bit of spots here and there where the really dark parts of the black paint will still peek through and give it a little bit more dimension without having to do a whole lot of shading. Now, since I'm in a rush, I'm not really going to be doing a A+ paint job on this, and I know I should probably try a little bit harder since I'm posting videos and stuff of this, but I'm just doing some really basic dry brushing with a dollar store makeup brush. Here, I'm just doing a very light gray to pick up all of the texture that I've put on and kind of make all of these bricks pop and look a little bit more individual. And in between the bricks, you'll still be able to see all of the shade from the black paint. For the roof, to give it a little bit more of a tile vibe, I'm gonna mix in this barn red with the gray and dry brush this onto the roof. That way it kind of looks maybe terracotta-y, or it could kind of look like wood, but I'm kind of going for more of a terracotta tile look. So I want this to just have the lighter points be a very dark grayish red to look like clay shingles. Now to do some really easy weathering and aging, I'm just going to be dry brushing this green. It's going to kind of look mossy, maybe a little mildewy. Since they're going to be running into this in a swamp, I feel like it's appropriate, but I still want it to be reusable for other situations. So I feel like just doing a quick green dry brush will make it look a little murkier, a little dirtier, and that it's just been out in the weather for a long time. So I'm just doing a very light dry brush so that way it doesn't overpower the other colors I've already put on. And voila, I did go a little heavier on the green with the stonework, but the more that I put on, the more I liked the aging look that it gave it. I was able to make this relatively quickly in a night or two, but I know that not everybody has a hot wire cutter, and I'm fortunate to, so it made the process a lot easier. And if you're just using a razor blade, this would take you some time. So I've already ran the encounter that I built this for, and it was a hit. I love the way that these floors can come apart and can magnetize back together. The magnets aren't super strong, but they can essentially suspend one floor at a time or keep the entire thing together when it's jostled. My goal was to make this very versatile, so I kept the inside relatively plain so that way you can style it with anything you want for the setting you're running. And to keep it modular so I could use it for different encounters if I needed a smaller building, a one-floor home, or an actual tower. So I hope you enjoyed this build as much as I did. I had a blast making it. This is probably the biggest build that I've ever done. I've never really done terrain on this scale before, and it was a blast, so I'll probably be doing similar builds in the future. If you like this video, or if you want to see some of my other miniature painting, miniature making videos, you can check it out on my channel. And if you want to see even more pictures, short videos, you can check out my Instagram and my TikTok. I appreciate you stopping by. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.